This is the All Rev'd Up podcast, and I'm Reverend Emmett Price.
And I'm Reverend Irene Monroe.
Irene, you got me all riled up during our season opener last week, and our listeners loved it. I mean, we got so many comments, I had to go back and listen to it myself, and I must say, it was good.
Oh, yeah. And you know, the wonderful thing, we got shout outs via emails and text messages. So I can't thank them enough. So I have to just say a tsunami of thanks.
Well, before we head into this episode on Sweet Sweetback's Baadassss, 50 years, let's actually take the moment here to thank each and every one of our listeners and viewers. Thank you for listening to us on the various podcast apps and for watching the actual live recording of the podcast on our YouTube channel. We are grateful for your support, your encouragement, your feedback, your reviews, and your comments.
Oh, indeed. Oh, indeed. And another thing that I think a lot of listeners, particularly from last week's segment, and I say, keep it going, you sided with me. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you once again.
Episode 2, we're in.
All right, let's do it.
We just want to borrow one of your boys for a couple hours and take him downtown to make us look good.
When did you people start getting so interested in black folks?
On September 22nd, 2021, the world lost one of the greats in the world of film and cinema. Melvin Van Peebles passed in his New York City home, surrounded by family at the age of 89. Amongst his long resume of creative works as an author, director, screenwriter, playwright, and composer, it was the 1971 Sweet Sweetback's Baadassss song that remains a game changer in film. Now, many consider it a near early example of blaxploitation, but others, like myself, see it as a revolutionary film of urban uplift and self-determination. Irene, how do you remember Van Peebles, and what do you think of Sweet Sweetback's Baadassss song?
Oh my God, I just love that era. I was coming of age. The style was bell bottoms. I was living in bell bottom hell because I flapped at the ankles. It was just a beautiful time to see Black representation, something I need to say that just was not happening. It was an interesting time because the 70s, he marshaled in something that we could not have imagined, which was Black people not only on film, but on television. Because, and during that era, Flip Wilson came on. I mean, there was Julia, that we were beginning to see something that he had just opened up. But his film, unlike you say something like Julia or even Superfly, it denounced the white gaze. The film was fabulous because the whole idea was that there was this plot twist. I mean, he was working with the government, with the police to take down this militant. And this is an important thing because he was making the statement, because you got to remember that by 1971, the government, our government, the man, we're going to deconstruct the man, but the man had neutralized the Panthers. You got to realize now, Fred Hampton is gone. And a whole lot of other, Panthers have either, strung out on drugs because of how they flooded our neighborhoods, number one. So this was really a wonderful kind of comeback kind of film, seeing urban life and humanizing the people. But the wonderful thing about the plot, because you go like, oh my God, this guy is what we used to call back in the day, Uncle Tom, but today we just say Clarence Thomas. And the thing about it is that, he was like working with the government to sort of neutralize and kill this militant. But then he has this epiphany, this wake up moment. And it's like, what am I doing? And he joins, and he, with the militant, kills the police. Then he's fleeing to the border of Mexico. But see, when I look back at this, I wasn't quite sure. I only thought the man was just one thing. I thought it was, as we say back in the day, we used to say whitey and hunky. That was the terminology. But I realized that the man is this. The man is the government. The man, is the industrial prison complex. The man is in structural, structural racism. So, but this is with older eyes here. But it was, again, a moment of keeping a kind of Black militancy, and he's really kind of the first that where we don't see someone being apologetic. He rated it X, which was brilliant, because the whole idea that of a film being rated X is that, okay, it's not for children, it's horrible. But he used it, he says, it's rated X by all white jury, the man. And because he said that, he got us all, because I wasn't even of age to be up in an X-rated, but everybody was going to see, and a film that he made, like with about $50,000, he made about 10 million from it. So, and not to even think about the residuals and stuff. So this was the time that he started Black exploitation film, a new genre that just kicked off, because like after that, there was Shaft, and then there was Superfly. But the thing that his film was about, as well as Shaft, was that if you're going to have Black exploitation films, they need to have a message, and his did.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you on so many, levels. What's interesting is that he often talked about the fact that it was rated X, not necessarily by him, but by the white folks who were trying to censor him. But I mean, here's a point. He made this film with $150,000. 50 of that was borrowed from Bill Cosby, who did not necessarily want an equity share, but just wanted his money back, as Van Peebles would say. And he grossed $15.2 million. And this is after he had a previous film, which Columbia Pictures tried to give him a 3-film deal, but he said, no, I want to do this myself. I want to keep control of it. And his film was so amazing that Huey P. Newton, because I'm glad that you invoked the Black Panthers, Huey P. Newton said that all the members of the Black Panther Party, this was required viewing for all of the members because of the Black power notion of it and the Black uplift in it. And so here's...
Yeah. And the wonderful thing about it is that now in film school, it is a requirement, which is just absolutely phenomenal, because when it first came out, okay, using the man in this sense is the media, the New York Times, trashed it, just absolutely trashed it. I need to say this. NAACP won't too cool on it, and neither was the Amsterdam. But in 1996, they, it's new eyes. That's what I'm saying. Like, I look at it and understand, the man is beyond just that single white person. We now got a better understanding of what the man is. And it is just an amazing film. And the thing that gets me about it is that, we talk about, I'm using Ice-T the rapper because he got in a lot of trouble about kill the cops. But what Van Peebles was doing was like, yes, we got to listen. We got to do something about police brutality here. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We're saying, defund the cops. Ice-T was saying kill them, but it's an ongoing problem. And by 1971 here, I need to also say this. We not only lost Malcolm, which the X was in, because he was using a lot of, nuances and stuff, was in reference to Malcolm X. But we lost Malcolm, we lost King. The civil rights movement was phasing out. Stokely Michael was rising up. But we lost a lot of folks here. And so this was like, in many ways, a pivotal watershed moment.
Well, the film is dedicated to all the brothers and sisters who had enough of the man. You're absolutely right. And the trailer that we saw was a re-released from Xenon Pictures, which actually digitally restored in 4K the movie. And so it's important to recognize that this film itself has its own life. But I do want to mention that when it first came out, I found a fact that said in Boston, when it was screened in Boston, the theater there cut out 9 minutes.
That's right.
And Van Peebles' response was, should the rest of the community submit to your censorship?
That's right.
Right?
That's
you
right.
know, your white standards,
That's
right,
right.
that you have imposed on the Black community. So here's a person who was an absolute revolutionary and used the creative arts and his own artistry to really speak back to, as you say, the man, vis-a-vis white supremacy. I'm going to say, you talked about the government. I'm going to say white supremacy and this notion of white superiority, which you invoked through the notion of the gays.
And if you read any of the news about Boston censoring this, now you got to understand this is what's happening here, because Boston is lauded as the city on the hill here. So that's 1971. They're censoring now. The intent is for a Black audience. I mean that's very clear. It makes it very, very clear. And Black folks are going to this theater, but he's the first to be an independent filmmaker. That's number one. But then you got to understand this. But then 2 years later, we're in 1973, and we got the Boston bus crisis. So you really get to see that kind of racial cauldron that Black people up here were living with, that it really was no different. Like I say, no different than the South, that if you're below the Mason-Dixon line, it's down South. And if you're above it, it's up South. So, he really disrupt convention and what we understood as the norm. I'm surprised. I just got to say, I'm surprised that brother wasn't locked up or someone didn't try to kill him.
Well, I'm certain that they did. I mean, because here's somebody who directed, who wrote, who scored, who edited, who produced, who marketed it all by himself. Yeah. And that it grossed $15.2 million from $150,000 investment. Somebody was after him. Our producers, Irene, are telling us that we're having too much fun talking about this old movie. Our producers are millennials. So
that's right.
We're talking about this old stuff. Let's take a break here. We'll be right back. This is the All Rev'd Up podcast.
I'm a political being, and what I wanted to do was to talk to the folks in the hood. I wanted them to listen to me.
We're back. This is the All Rev'd Up podcast. The voice that you just heard was Melvin Van Peebles from a 2005 documentary entitled Unstoppable: Conversation with Melvin Van Peebles, Gordon Parks, and Ossie Davis on the Stars Network. Irene, I mean, just listening to his voice and listening to him describe who he is, who he was, I mean, what does that say to you?
Well, it says a lot of things to me. One of the things that we don't use enough in our community is to recognize Renaissance men. Mm-hmm. And he was a genius. Mm-hmm. And one of the things people don't understand is that he was a playwright on Broadway. I went to see Ain't Supposed to Die a Natural Death, that was nominated here. And then people don't understand this, that he wrote 5 novels. Mm-hmm. He was a portrait painter in Mexico, a cab driver in San Francisco, a street performer in Paris. People don't know that he speaks 4 to 5 different languages. He actually, the real truth is, he had joined the Air Force and he wanted to be an Air Force bomber, a pilot, mm-hmm. but given discrimination. That's why, earlier before we even got on, I said, what year? Because we got to realize he was born in 1932 in the midst of the Depression. So he went through that. He's part of the Great Migration here. He was part of the Civil Rights Movement. He's also part of the expats movement, because like Richard Wright and James Baldwin and Josephine Baker, he went to Paris. That's when he was a street performer. So we don't really capture the enormity of his talent and of his brilliance here. But one of the things where that particular segment where you're saying he was really trying to educate the ghetto, one of which is that because back then we call it the ghetto, the hood here. He was trying to do a couple of things here, that when we see ourselves on television or in film or on the big screen, it didn't have to be negative, mm-hmm. move away from the white gaze, and that we had agency, even if we don't have money. We got agency. And he then set a template that, Spike Lee, Ava DuVernay, Julie Dash, all of these people who really stand on his shoulder as an independent filmmaker. And the shoulder that he stands on, believe it or not, that many people forget and did race films. They were called at that time Oscar Michaud, who opened up, a theater and stuff. So again, and also I need to say this. I'm not surprised by his brilliance and his I'm not surprised by his brilliance here because he grew up in segregated America. He understands that you have to do things independently. See, I grew up in that era of integration. Okay. And that rollout, we realized that we lost our agency, our economic power, and control of our lives. So this was a man clearly about self-determination and agency.
Let's talk about the rest of them, though, because born in Chicago, Illinois, his father was a tailor. And I mean, in 1953, he graduated with a bachelor's in literature from Ohio Wesleyan University. And his actual birth name is Melvin Peebles. When he lived in the Netherlands, he changed his last name to Van Peebles. I know. Here's somebody who's like, he's not taking nothing from nobody. He's going to build a legacy because he's committed. He's determined. He's going to persevere, and
name himself.
Right.
Which is very important. And I love it because he put the Van there because the whole idea then it means that you have aristocracy. Part of it was trying to hustle the man to get more money.
Yeah. Well,
when he needed funding for his film and they say, who? He said, I'm Melvin Van Peebles. Mm-hmm.
Here's somebody who not only lived in the United States, but lived in Mexico, lived in the Netherlands, lived in France, lived all over the place with his family. And just the imagination that he has to even say to himself that although all of these folks, right, white supremacy, discrimination, racism, all of these folks, these theories, these ideas are telling me that I can't do anything, that I'm not worth anything. I am going to rebuke them and I'm going to do what I feel that I'm put on this planet to do, which is to create.
Yeah. But, there's this book, like, if there are 5 people that you could go back into history or who are living or have passed away, you would like to sit at a table and have a conversation with, it's definitely this brother. Yeah. Because again, one of the things is that I feel like there are not enough conversations, that we hear by Van Peebles here. But I like his tenacity that, what he understood was this here. He said, there's a quote by his son that says, if we understand that a picture says more than 1,000 words, then film says even more. And then you put Black people in it, then it just explodes here. And so I just haven't had enough of him. There's just it's 89 years, but it feels like, oh my God, he's gone. And I think people like Spike Lee and Jordan Peele, all need to, when they do their films, say in honor of or in homage to this particular brother here.
You named a lot of Black filmmakers. I'll add the Hudlin brothers in there as well.
That's right, and Singletary.
And Jonathan Singleton, Singleton. But you didn't say Tyler Perry. And I want to ask you about this because, so I got to ask you about Tyler Perry because, we invoked all of these filmmakers, and a lot of people look at what Melvin Van Peebles did, particularly with Sweet Sweetback's Baadassss song, and say that it was blaxploitation. But you and I agree that there's meaning in it, there's a message in it, there's uplift in it. So do you put that film, and we're looking at it 50 years later, do you put that in the blaxploitation category, or you put it somewhere else?
It's interesting. He didn't build that category. I mean, black exploitation is, the exploitation of Black people by Black producers. But his film didn't do that. He what he wanted to do was to show here that you could be a Black producer and have a message. But what happened, what really took it out of the canon, because only really two of those black exploitation films really make a message: Shaft and certainly Sweetback. But then the next one that rolled out that really gave it that title, Black Exploitation, is Superfly, because here's a cocaine dealer who then goes into the community and exploits the community. You got to understand that Melvin Van Peebles' film, along with Shaft, don't exploit the people. But I just need to say is that then we get New Jack City. I mean, we get a role. These more contemporary films would fall under the rubric of black exploitation.
Well, I'm going to take Sweet Sweetback's badass song out of that black exploitation category and call it a dope film that was, genius. As a matter of fact, he inspires Melvin Van Peebles, and this piece inspires my benediction. Allow me to share that for our listeners today. One person, a mere mortal, a sole individual, can make a difference. The son of a Chicago tailor, Melvin Van Peebles, is yet another exemplar that one person, a mere mortal, sole individual, can make a difference. An educated writer, yet self-taught director and filmmaker, Van Peebles was on a divine mission, like John Coltrane, to be a force for good. Unashamed of not knowing, he learned what he needed to learn and never coveted the corporate carrot enough to sell his own soul. Instead, he leveraged his soul and armed himself with courage, persistence, and determination to not only write and direct his work, but to edit and score and market it himself. One person, a mere mortal, sole individual, can make a difference. He lived for his people, loved his people, wrote for his people, to his people, and in many ways wrote because of his people. He was our legend, with a legacy that far exceeded his own seed. In his 70s, he had mad style. In his 80s, he was just learning to lean into his elder swag. The brother was, shall we say, badass. Just like his song for Sweet Sweetback. He taught us that one person, a mere mortal, sole individual, can make a difference. He lived all over the world: Chicago, San Francisco, Hollywood, Mexico, Netherlands, France, New York City, and never stopped inspiring, never stopped encouraging, and never stopped telling it like it was. That one person, a mere mortal, sole individual, can make a difference. So, what's the lesson? What's the main thing? What's the 411? What's the point to this meandering soliloquy? That you, beloved, a person, a mere mortal, a sole individual, can make a difference. So let's get to it. Ashe?
Ashe.
Amen.
Amen.
All Rev'd Up is brought to you by us, the Revs. Our amazing producers are Kyla Wright and Cavante Smalls.
Music for this episode is from Reverend Price's son and musical prodigy, Emmett G. Price IV. All Rev'd Up is distributed by GBH.
Additional thanks to Bob Kempf, Elizabeth O'Brien, May He, Devin Robbins, Meredith Neerman, and Zach Waldman.
If you like what you hear, let us know. Give us a review on Apple Podcasts and follow us at All Rev'd Up Pod on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube.
Feel free to send us a note, a question, or a comment to allrevduppod@gmail.com. We'll be back